Colleen Patrick-Goudreau.
Thanks, so just to be clear, I'm using this microphone, not this one. I'm confused. Is this one?
Yes, that's the one on your lapels for the video.
Got it. Okay, but I can move, I can pick this up. Okay. That's very exciting. It's very exciting you've been raising so much money. It's too bad they weren't able to get the electric bill paid, though. So, it's too bad. You can see me though, okay, right? Are the lights off for the coolness, or no one else has mentioned that there are lights off in the room? Like, no one else has noticed that there aren't any lights in the room? I'm fine with it if you're fine with it, but no one else notices? I just want to make sure it's not me. I was just at the eye doctor last week, and I don't think it's me. Okay, so we'll just keep going like this, but you can see me and I can see you for the most part. It is lovely to be here. It is amazing that it's 100 degrees up here. And it's always just so incredible. I know people like Hope and organizations like Compassionate Living putting these events on. It takes so much work, it takes so much time and so much work, and it's for all of you. So I'm just grateful for all of you being here. As I said, my name is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau, and the mission in my work is to empower people to make informed food choices, to debunk myths about veganism, to be a voice for animals, and to give people the tools and resources they need to live according to their own values of compassion and wellness. I always say that I'm not asking anyone to live according to my values. I'm urging people to live according to their own values. And I do think that people are interested in making this change. I really come from the very optimistic position that people are really interested in making a change. And we see people making this change all the time, which is really encouraging. Some people are doing it for health reasons. Some people don't want to contribute to the violence against animals. Some people don't want to contribute to slaughterhouse workers being desensitized to their own compassion and to the suffering of the animals they're killing every second of every day. Some people don't want to contribute to global depletion and the destruction of the rainforest so that we create grazing land for cattle. Some people don't want to contribute to the resources that it takes to breed and keep and kill animals. I always say pick a reason, and any single one of them would be a reason to choose a plant-based lifestyle. So I see people making these changes all the time, and that's incredibly encouraging, but despite these compelling reasons, people still seem to have blocks when it comes to actually making the changes and certainly sticking to them, right? So many people who really want to manifest their values in their behavior are interested in doing so, and yet there's something that stops them from doing it, and why is that? So I don't have all weekend to talk about why that is, because there are a lot of reasons, but a few of them, one of them is that we are bombarded with the information several times a day that we should be consuming as much meat, dairy, and eggs as possible, right? Probably 1,000 times a day. I mean, you can document it yourself. You could document yourself how many times we get this message from the radio, from commercials, from television, from magazines, from menus, from billboards, right? All of it, right? We're getting this message constantly that we should be consuming as much meat, dairy, and eggs as possible. We live in a culture that doesn't support us making the most healthful choices, the most compassionate choices. It actually works against us, right? So we get this message constantly. We get this message in our own homes. One of the things that breaks my heart more than anything is that we encourage children to be compassionate. It's one of the basic tenets that we teach our children. It's what all of us were taught when we were growing up. It's what all of us were taught. And yet we're suspicious of that same compassion in adults. We call it sentimentality. If someone is an adult and they're compassionate and they care about animals, we don't value it the way we value that compassion in children, and yet all of us are taught to be compassionate. I think all of us can identify with that process of coming into this world innately compassionate and connecting with animals and connecting with our compassion, and then eventually having that kind of dulled and kind of set aside, and we become desensitized to that. I know a lot of us can identify with that process. And so ultimately the messages that we get is that we should choose convenience over our compassion, and we should choose status quo over our own values. And so those are some of the things that are working against us, that are not in our favor in terms of manifesting our own values. We also are bombarded with myths, so many myths and misconceptions that keep us from making the changes we say we want to make, particularly myths around nutrition, around food, around the animals. And what happens is we tend to use these myths and these misconceptions as excuses to not make the changes that we want to make, especially around nutrition. I mean, most of us have the same myths around nutrition, right? And all of it stems from the fact that most of us are raised to believe that the nutrients we need are animal-based, right? Most of us are raised to believe that, right? So if I were to ask you where we're taught we're supposed to get our calcium from, you would say, don't say kale, because that's not kale, and no one's taught that, really, sometimes. Now, maybe you, but not everybody, right? So we're taught that we're supposed to get our calcium from cow's milk. We're taught that we're supposed to get our omega-3 fatty acids from fish, and we're taught that we're supposed to get our protein from meat, eggs, dairy, really all of it, right? Everyone's obsessed with protein, right? Protein, protein, protein. Everyone's obsessed with protein. It's the number one question we all get. We're so used to the protein question. I tried to be protein. I tried to be vegetarian, and I just needed my protein. Really, like what? How did you know that I just needed my protein? I just needed protein, so I had to stop being vegetarian. Well, how did you know you needed protein? Well, my body told me I needed some protein. Well, what did your body say? Like, I don't know. Like, how did you know what it was saying? I don't know. I was tired. And okay, that's not really protein deficiency, but what else happened? I don't know. You know, I was anemic. Okay, that's iron. That's not protein. That has nothing to do with anemia. So everyone's obsessed with protein, and yet no one could tell you what protein deficiency looks like, right? I mean, raise your hands. Have you ever heard of heart disease? Raise your hands if you've heard of heart disease. Raise your hands. Have you heard of cancer, diabetes? Do you know anybody who's on cholesterol-lowering medication? You've heard of blood pressure-lowering medication? Raise your hand if you know someone with kwashiorkor. Kwashiorkor, anybody? Kwashiorkor in the house? Nobody with kwashiorkor in the house? You'd think we'd know someone with kwashiorkor, because kwashiorkor is the scientific term for protein deficiency. So you'd think we'd know someone. Are there any kwashiorkor wards in the Sonoma County hospitals? No kwashiorkor specialists in the house? If we have a protein deficiency issue, we don't have a kwashiorkor specialist in the house. That's very dangerous, right? So we're all obsessed with this idea that we're not going to get enough protein, but no one has ever met anybody with kwashiorkor. It's because we don't have kwashiorkor in developing nations. We've seen people with kwashiorkor, and we've seen hunger organizations show us pictures of people who are living in parts of the world who have distended bellies, who have yellowing skin, right? They have kwashiorkor. They're not getting any protein because they're not getting any food. So the only time we truly see protein deficiency in developed nations, quite literally, is when people are so sick that they're not getting the nutrients they need, or they're anorexic and they're not eating food. I mean, quite literally, that's when we see true kwashiorkor. But the problems we have, the diseases that you're all familiar with, those conditions that you're familiar with, that you raised your hand about, those are diseases of excess. We don't have diseases of deficiency, we have diseases of excess, right? Anybody with rickets in the beriberi? Anyone scurvy, right? We took care of the diseases of deficiency. We're in a place in our development where we could be the healthiest population ever with the information and the access to nutrients and food that we have, ever. And yet we're dying of diseases that we have no business dying from. We think we're so developed. They would love to be able to take care of those basic things, people in developed nations. They'd love to not die of scurvy, which we don't have to worry about, but we're dying of the diseases of excess. That's our problem, right? So that's what's happening. The problem is that we're all taught that the nutrients we need are animal-based. The bottom line is the nutrients we need are plant-based, period. The only nutrient that's not plant-based is vitamin B12, but it's not animal-based either. It's bacteria-based. Right? So even that isn't a reason, like all the nutrients are plant-based, right? So right now, what we're doing, we're asking the wrong questions. The question isn't where do vegetarians get their protein? And it's not to say that these aren't important nutrients to make sure we're getting. It's just that we don't have to be obsessed over them to the degree that we use that as an excuse to not do anything. That's what I'm saying, right? But so what's happening is that we're asking the question, where do vegetarians get their protein? When what we should be asking is, why are we taught that we should go through the animals to get to the nutrients that the animals get because the animals eat plants? We need to skip the middle animal and go directly to the plants, go directly to the source of these nutrients. And when we do so, we skip the saturated fat, the animal-based saturated fat, we skip the dietary cholesterol, we skip the heavy metals, and we go right to the vitamins, the nutrients, the minerals, the phytochemicals, the antioxidants, the folate, the fiber, all of the things that originate in plants. The problem is we're going through the animals. And when we do so, we're basically squandering everything, the resources that it takes ethically, the resources, health-wise, just the consequences to doing this make absolutely no sense when we have everything we need from the plants themselves, right? If you were to look at calcium, for instance, and the resources that it takes to get what we're taught we should get through cow's milk, right? So, well, let's back up just to make sure we're all on the same page, because we weren't on the same page about the lights. So, what's calcium? It's a mineral, thank you. I know it's late and it's dark. Some of us don't think as well in the dark. It's not dark, no, it's not dark. Calcium is a mineral, right? And where are minerals found? In the ground, in the soil, right? In the earth, right? And so why do cows have calcium in their milk? Because they theoretically eat grass, right? The idea is that they're getting the nutrients from the plants themselves, and they then take in the nutrients, and there you go, right? It's theoretical because most cows these days, dairy cows, are kept on dry lots. They're not eating grass. And so in order for the dairy industry to live up to the marketing claims that it's a high calcium food, what do they do to their feed? I have no idea what you said, but I'm just going to answer it. They supplement it, because I can't hear all y'all said the right answer probably. They supplement it with calcium, right? They supplement their feed with calcium. You could supplement your feed with calcium. It's very simple. Like, you could just supplement your feed with calcium, right? Or you could just go to the plants, right? But instead, so we have to start with a cow whose feed is supplemented, right? Who then has to be impregnated because, of course, as a mammal, the only way that they're able to lactate is by being pregnant. She's a mammal. And I remember when I learned that, and I was an adult, and I was a pretty smart adult, but I hadn't been taught that cows have to be pregnant in order to lactate. We don't even say that language. We don't even use the language lactate. We don't say cows lactate. We don't say cows produce milk. We say they give milk, as if they come into this world ready to bestow upon humans their nutritional gold. I am here to give my milk. That's the language that we use, and that's what we wind up believing. We really do believe it. So I know that there is someone in this room who either just recently or just now realized, I had no idea cows had to give milk, because we're not encouraged to believe it. We believe that it's just part of the process, and it's really a gift from them to us, right? But the truth is, they have to be pregnant for 9 months. And at the end of that 9-month period, all she wants is her baby. That is all she wants. And there is no denying that. She wants to nurture that baby, she wants to nourish that baby, she wants to clean that baby, she wants to feed that baby. That is all she wants, and she is not allowed to do that. That baby's taken away from her so we could take her milk. And if she's female, she goes into the same servitude as her mother. And if he's male, and 50% are, he's either killed right away, or he is raised for 16 weeks, chained up, and kept for veal. And I remember when I first learned that these babies are just incidental, that they exist only because she had to be pregnant, right? That was so shocking to me. That's the only reason they exist. And of course, the dairy industry wanted to make sure it was profitable, and that's why they sell the males so they can get money. And they don't do it to the females. A lot of people ask why they don't do it to the females, because these are animals who are bred specifically to be milk machines. They're not bred to be the big, stocky beef cattle. So that's why they're not sold to the beef industry. They're bred specifically for their milk. So all of this for what? So we could get the calcium that is in the ground, right? I mean, if we were to understand and just think for a moment that this animal, this baby, was allowed to, just kind of eat on his own and not be taken away, right? Over time, he'd be drinking from his mother, he'd be getting his nutrients from his mother, and then what would happen over time as he gets bigger? He'd start to wean, right? It's a concept some of us understand. He would be weaned, and he would move on to solid food, and he would get the nutrients directly himself, right? Now, we can understand this a little bit, because we go through that sometimes, and then we're weaned, right? And then we're told, hang on, don't be hasty. You now need to consume the milk of another animal, even though the offspring of that very animal has stopped drinking his mother's milk. Have you ever seen an adult bull try to get milk from his mother? No, you haven't. Have you ever seen an adult human try to get? There are probably videos somewhere on the internet, but I don't even want to know. But if I were to even suggest that we market it and it becomes something that we should consume, just the idea that we should consume our own milk into adulthood, we are absolutely disgusted by that. And yet we are conditioned to believe that we should be consuming the milk of another animal, right? I mean, it just doesn't even make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Of course it doesn't. And that's what the conditioning has done to us, is that we think it's weird to consume our own species' milk, but there's not a problem drinking another animal's milk. So why cows then? Why did we pick cows? Why didn't we pick humans? I think we know why we didn't pick humans. Why didn't we pick other animals? Why cows? Why goats? Why sheep? Why buffalo? Why camels, right? What is it about these animals that make it conducive that we should drink their milk? What's so special about their milk? What? Right, so it has nothing to do with the milk, right? It has to do with the nature of the animals. So they're docile animals because why? They're herd animals, right? They're easy to keep together, they're easy to control, right? That's the idea. If we wanted to get the highest amount of calcium from an animal's milk, we should be drinking hyena's milk because they have a lot of calcium in their milk, because they eat bones, because, you know, that's what they do. But there's a problem with that business model. You see where I'm going with this? They'd kill you if you tried to take their milk, or their baby, or tried to impregnate them. It wouldn't work so well, so that's the problem. The point is, that's how arbitrary it is. It has nothing to do with the milk. It has everything to do with the nature of the animals. So that's how arbitrary it is. So the idea is that we skip the middle animal, go directly to the source, go directly to the nutrients, go directly to the green leafy vegetables to get the calcium, and skip the middle cow. Because of course then when we're doing so, we're also skipping all of the other problems with it that we don't need. We don't need the saturated fat, we don't need the dietary cholesterol, et cetera, right? We only get the good stuff with the greens. Does that make sense, right? And you can do that with every single nutrient. You can do that with the omega-3 fatty acids, right? Omega-3 fatty acids. Why do fish get omega-3 fatty acids? Why do they have omega-3 fatty acids in their flesh? Because they eat the algae, right? They don't just come and say, I'm going to get some omega-3s, I'm going to give it to the people who eat me. That's not how it works. Like, they have to get the nutrients from somewhere. And so they're consuming the smaller animals, some of them are carnivorous, and they're consuming the smaller animals who then consume the algae, or they're consuming the algae directly, right? And so we're going through all of the same thing. We're going through the middle fish, and we're getting the saturated fat, the dietary cholesterol, all the problems. We're getting some mercury thrown in, some heavy metals thrown in. And that goes for the farm-raised fish too, because these are carnivorous fish, and they have to go to the wild ocean in order to get the fish to feed the carnivore fish, the carnivorous fish, right? So you don't get away from it even then. And if the fish don't get omega-3 fatty acids, and let me tell you something, they're not putting algae inside these confined tanks, in these confinement tanks, they're not getting the algae, you're not getting the omega-3 fatty acids. So skip the middle fish and go directly to the plants, go directly to the flax seeds, to the walnuts. You can go straight to DHA, which is what our bodies can convert these EFAs into anyway, which is sourced from algae, and we can get all the nutrients we need and better, right? So those are some of the myths that we all hold and that we all walk around using to keep us from making these changes. Some of the other blocks that we have to do with food. One of the things that I try to do is to take vegan food out of the box called vegan. I'm always putting in quotes vegan food, because vegan food, we oversay vegan, you realize that. We oversay it. We have friends, they're all vegan. They say, I went to a vegan restaurant, I had vegan food, and I had a vegan, I'm like, I know you're vegan, so I know that's what you're eating. You can just say I had food and I just had cake. We overuse this word vegan like it's a special food group, and we do tend to do that, right? And we being the vegans, and I'm hoping we're not the only people in this room, but we overdo it because we all feed into this idea that there's regular food over here, then there's vegan food over here, right? It's like some special food group just for the vegans, right? So vegan food, when I try to take it out of that box, and really, when we're talking about vegan food, we're talking about fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and beans and mushrooms and grains and herbs and spices. It's food that people already eat. It's not some special vegan food. This is the vegan banana. And this is the banana. This is the vegan apple, and this is the apple. It's just an apple, and I know it's vegan because it's an apple, right? So we can just take that out of the box. And when we do that just in general, it just relaxes everybody, and it feels so much less daunting and so much less intimidating, and it feels so much more familiar because it is. And that's the first thing I say to people when they say, yeah, they'll be like, I don't know if I've ever had vegan food before. I say, you had vegan food. If you had an apple, you had some vegan food, right? So we got to take this idea out of there that it's something special. So that's the first thing. A lot of people, in terms of other blocks related to food, I think the issue isn't just the food, it's really our perception of ourselves. So much of this is about our perception of ourselves. There's never been one person I've ever said I'm vegan to who didn't say, I don't eat a lot of meat. I don't eat a lot of dairy. I don't really eat meat. Well, I eat chicken, but I don't really eat meat. I've never met anyone who does not have the perception that they don't eat a lot of meat, ever, right? The truth is you don't know how much you eat until you stop. That is when you're aware of your behavior. That's when you're aware of your habits, when you stop them. Because what's happening is we all make the same choices over and over. We all go to the same restaurants over and over. We get the same things off of the menu at those restaurants over and over, right? We eat the same things again and again. And we're not aware of what's over here. We don't even know that there are other options because we're not looking through that lens. This was always so cute when people say, vegans, like, so what do you eat? There's not a lot of variety, is there? And I'm thinking, I know you eat like the same 5 things over here. We all do it. We all do that as humans. And truly what happens when you make the decision and you change the lens through which you look, and it's one of the reasons why I wrote the 30-Day Vegan Challenge, because you have to stop it long enough to create new habits. You have to stop it long enough to create new foundations, because if you just do it once in a while, you're not gonna ever look over there. But if you make this decision and go, okay, I'm not gonna do it for 30 days, so I'm gonna have a hamburger now, wait, I'm not eating hamburgers, so what's over here? And you go, oh my God, there's like other foods over here and cuisines and restaurants and things that I've never tried before that you wouldn't have looked to had you not made this decision. It has to be this kind of conscious decision to try something, and then the behavior changes, changing the behavior really does change the way you think. That's really how it works, which is really powerful. So the idea is that you have to create a new foundation. So many people who've told me that they tried being vegan but stopped, I know it's because they removed things that were familiar to them and they didn't replace them with anything else. You have to create another foundation or you'll just flail and you're not going to stand on firm ground. So it's a matter of creating a new foundation, and when you do, that becomes second nature. Right, does that make sense? That becomes second nature, that becomes the habits. So when people say to me, God, vegan, that seems so hard, my answer is, it's not, in the sense that it is just as effortless choosing vegan as it was when I was choosing what I was conditioned to choose over here. But the transition is challenging for people because we're such creatures of habit. And that's really what it comes down to. And so holding your hand, coming to a place like this and finding resources, that's what really guides people, because you learn some new habits that you wouldn't have had before, right? But those new habits become second nature. Speaking of nature, one of the things that we also do when we think about making a change and then we are blocked immediately, people say things like, I tried being vegetarian, but I really craved meat. Anybody ever say that? Anybody ever hear that? Yeah, I tried. I'm really craving meat. And I said, you weren't craving meat. And they go, no, I was really craving meat. I was really craving meat, and then I had a burger, and it was really good. And I said, you weren't craving meat. And they go, no, what? And we have an argument, because you're not craving meat. We are not true carnivores. We're not obligate carnivores. We are not lions on the plain who see gazelles run by and think of lunch, right? That's not what we do. We do not crave the flesh of another animal. If you want to know what it's like to crave the flesh of another animal, have you ever seen a domestic cat see a bird or a squirrel? They get and their eyes dilate and their tail starts to flicker. And they don't care about you because you're not even there. And they make this little chirping sound and they might drool a little bit. Is that how you get when you see a bird? When you see deer, some cattle grazing on the side of the road. I hope not. Please say no. That's not how we get, right? We don't even react that way when we see animals who've been hit by a car on the side of the road. Our first thought is disgust, and our second thought is compassion. We don't take out our forks and start thinking about lunch, right? Please say you don't. I hope not. But the point is that we don't crave, that's what craving flesh is. That's what craving meat is. That's what craving animals is. We don't crave the flesh of another animal, but we do crave fat. We crave salt. We crave flavor. We crave familiarity. We crave texture. These are all the things that we crave. And I use the word crave loosely because in our wonderful, advanced, educated culture, we're all tempted to use words that add some scientific credence to them that really have to do with desire more than need. So when I say crave, we often use the word crave when really we just want something, right? I mean, we do that a lot. So, but we crave it. We're used to that. We're used to that. So often when someone says, like, I love my hamburger, I love my steak, whatever, I could never, stop. I crave meat. I said, it's not that. It's the fat, it's the salt, and it's the texture. And they go, you're right. It's the fat, the salt, and the texture. And all of those things are in plant foods, right? All of those things are in plant foods. The problem is that we were taught the meat, dairy, and eggs before we were taught what it was that we were actually getting: the fat, the salt, the texture, the flavor, the flavor. So what I recommend people do is when you think you're craving something like a burger or cheese, right, the big one for people, I recommend that you first go, wait, what is it that I really want? Oh, it's a certain mouthfeel, it's a creaminess, it's a texture, it's a chewiness, it's the fat, it's the salt, right? First identify those things, and then you can get those things satisfied from plant foods, right? So it's a matter of changing the medium of those things. Does that make sense, right? So if it's the fat, have some peanut butter. If it's fat, have some avocado or some guacamole. Put it on your burrito. Have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Put some nut butter in a smoothie. Have nuts, right? Have tofu. It's a higher fat food. Beans are higher fat. All good fats. If it's salt, have some salt. Like, just have some salt. Like, it's not that complicated. But one of the problems is, and I mean this, I don't make a lot of guarantees, because I'm going to get letters if I make guarantees, and people are going to go, you said this, and I'm not going to make them guarantees. But I will guarantee you that when you get meat, dairy, and eggs out of your diet for at least 30 days, your palate will change. And the high amounts of animal-based fat and salt that we're so accustomed to, that our palates are covered with right now, we don't have that same, it stops coating our palates. And our palates change, and we don't require or crave that same fat and salt. So even though I'm saying, like, okay, when you're craving fat and salt, have the fat and salt, you will crave it less. You absolutely will. So the amount of sodium that we get in so many of the processed foods and the animal products, we get less of it and we crave less of it, right? Because we only crave what's in our bodies, right? Right? I mean, most of us aren't craving cocaine. I don't know, maybe. I'm going somewhere with this. I'm going somewhere. Unless it's in your body. I mean, once it gets out of your body, you're not craving it anymore. And that's the idea with something like meat, dairy, and eggs, too. It's once you don't have it anymore, that's not what you want more of. Like, I never thought I was going to crave kale. Like, I didn't grow up craving broccoli at all. I would hide it under the table and give it to my dog. Like, I did that, right? But who knew, right? So what happens is you start to develop new tastes, and you start to develop a new palate, and it's really true. And that goes with the texture. If you want something chewy, eat something chewy. Like, it doesn't have to be an animal, right? It doesn't have to be that. If it's something creamy, you can get it from making, nut cheeses or cream sauces or guacamole, right? So identify what that craving is, and then meet the craving with the plant food. Does that make sense, right? And then there are more excuses. I could go on and on all day with the excuses that y'all give me, because I'm the one who hears it from all you, and then I got to come up with an answer for them. Then I hear people say, okay, fine, I would try it, I want to do it, I'm really interested, I want to eat healthier anyway, and I want to do it, but I'd have to chop so many vegetables. And it just takes so long to chop the vegetables, and I'm so busy, I don't have time to chop the vegetables. And they whine like this, like I can help. I can help. It's amazing how we sabotage ourselves, right? We have to chop the vegetables, it's gonna take too long, I'm so busy, everyone's so busy, right? I get it, we're busy, but I really don't believe you when you say that you don't have time to chop some vegetables. First of all, if you're not vegan or vegetarian and you don't have time to chop vegetables, I'm worried about you that you're not eating any vegetables at all, because everybody should be chopping vegetables. I don't care where you are on the spectrum, right? But we do have the time to chop vegetables. We're not making the time to chop vegetables, or we're not taking the time that we have to chop vegetables. I know people are watching some TV shows out there because they're very popular, and the interwebs, people are on it, So they have time, but they're choosing what to do with their time. And they're choosing to not chop vegetables with their time, right? And so the supermarkets have figured that out. And they're taking your money because they're chopping the vegetables for you. And so you can decide at any given moment, do you want to spend your time or do you want to spend your money? But you have that choice, right? That's really what it comes down to. And I think we do have the time. We just have to prioritize what it is that we care about, right? If we don't have the time to be sick, then we have to make time to be healthy. That's the bottom line, right? So we have time to get in the car, right? Drive to a restaurant, wait for a table, sit at the table, decide what to order, wait for the food, eat the food, wait for the check, and drive back home again. I'm thinking we have time to chop some vegetables. Just saying, right? So it's a matter of how we want to spend our time. I have no strength. I need protein. Hold on. Oh, I'm so weak. I'm so old, that joke. I'm so weak. I'm vegan. So I think we do have time. We just have to make the time. So one of the things that happens too is what happens is these are just little tricks we can play on ourselves that make a difference. We go to the grocery store, we go to the farmer's market, we get all our vegetables, we're really excited to eat healthily. We get home, we put them all in the fridge, and we eat healthy, and I'm so excited, I'm getting some recipes, and I got all the vegetables, right? And then we go down to the refrigerator, and we open it up, and we look at all the vegetables, and we go, I don't know, but there's nothing to eat in here, because the broccoli is still in a bunch, and the cauliflower is still in a head, and the carrots still have their tops on, and vegetables. And so we call the pizza guy, or put pizza in the microwave, and wait for it. We might have some time, and we don't chop the vegetables. And then we go, how do you keep vegetables from going bad in the fridge? They're going bad. I have a really amazing tip. I don't know if you've heard this. Write this down. It's amazing. The best way to stop vegetables from going bad in your fridge is to eat them. Not treat your refrigerator like a compost bin, right? So we just, how long can I keep them in the fridge? Right? Just eat the vegetables, right? So here's a tip. Before you put all of the vegetables into the refrigerator, it makes a difference. Chop them. Seriously, take 10 minutes a day. It doesn't have to take more than 10 minutes to chop some vegetables and put them in the fridge. And it works. It's amazing. You feel like little sprites came down in the middle of the night. The next time you open the fridge, like, yes, and there's peppers and there's onions, I can stir fry and snack on them, right? Or you can get them chopped up from the grocery store. Maybe one week you want to do that because you're busy, that was busier than usual, right? Another week you do it yourself. You can do that. Again, we always decide if we want to spend our time or our money. But when we have them chopped up in the refrigerator, it really makes a difference in terms of consuming stuff, right? Then people go, but if they're in the refrigerator for too long, aren't they going to lose their nutrients? No. They're not going to lose their nutrients. You like really, I don't know, someone else back there told me we're going to lose their nutrients. They're not going to lose their nutrients if they're chopped up for a couple days in the refrigerator. After a week, I might say you might want to be eating them before then. But here's a tip. Vegetables chopped in advance are more nutritious than no vegetables at all. Amazing how that works, right? So these excuses that we just use excuse after excuse. You see where I'm going here? And we're the ones who sabotage ourselves. And we're the ones who are our own worst enemies when we should be our own best friends to make the difference that we say that we want to make, right? Everyone says they want to make a difference, but I think people forget that in order to make a difference, we might have to do something different, right? Everyone says they want to make a difference, right? Everyone says they want to make a difference, and ultimately people do ask me if I think that people can make a difference. My answer is no. I don't think people can make a difference. I know people do make a difference. Everything we do, every action we take, everything we eat, every product we buy has an impact on someone or something else. We don't get to decide whether we can make a difference or not. We get to decide only if the difference we inevitably make is negative or positive. That's it. Those are our only two choices. There are no neutral actions. And I think this concept, this idea, is both frightening and empowering to people. It's empowering because it means that we're responsible and we have a tremendous amount of power. And it's frightening because it means that we're responsible and we have a tremendous amount of power. Because ultimately it comes down to us to make the difference, to manifest the values that we say we have,
Despite the cultural messages we get, despite the advertising we are bombarded by, despite the myths that are pervading in our culture, it comes down to us manifesting our values in our behavior. Because what I know for sure is the problems we have in this world are not because we have so much compassion we don't know what to do with it. The problems we have in this world are because people aren't living according to their own values of compassion and kindness. Imagine what this world would be like if that were on our to-do list every day. And so that is my hope for everyone. That's my hope for every single person, for all of us to realize that we have the power to make this world what we want it to, our own lives, this world. And so my hope is that we reflect our deepest values in our daily choices and realize that with each bite we take, we can create the world we want. Thank you very much.